This is Keyed In with Max and Brent, unlocking the minds of the industry's top real estate professionals. And now, here are your hosts, Max Rabin and Brent Jackson.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Keyed In podcast. I'm Max Rabin.
And I am Brent Jackson.
So today, Brent, our guest is Fred Kendrick from TTR Sotheby's International Realty. Fred is one of the best data experts that I've ever known, but he's also like, if I ever have a technical question about anything in real estate, I'm calling Fred first. I work with Jonathan Taylor, one of the owners of the company. He's a principal broker and he's been in the business 40 years. But if I have a question, I go to Fred because because you've been a manager for so long in multiple offices, you've seen it all, right? I mean, you've seen every question.
I've seen a lot, yeah. I definitely have.
I always tell people, no two deals are the same. And we do a lot of deals. We do close to 200 deals a year. And it's like, we'll call Fred a handful of times a year. And it's like, if we're calling Fred, it's not good news. It's like, we're in some sort of a jam and we need, a second set of eyes or second opinion on what's going on in the deal.
But we're gonna talk to Fred today as part of our State of the Market episode here, like winding down 2022. But Fred, why don't you give us like the straightforward story about like how you got into real estate and how you got to this point in your career where you're a manager and now you're in charge of business development too?
Professional development and all sorts of compliance issues, that sort of thing. Sure, sure.
Did you ever sell at all?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Selling wasn't for you?
I grew up in Louisiana, had a degree in political science and worked in politics a little bit and decided I hated it and looked around for a new profession and knew people in real estate in Louisiana and sort of figured out it's not that difficult to get a real estate license. What I didn't realize, it's very difficult to make a living, but it's not difficult. So looked around for places to work in Louisiana, decided to pick up and move to Washington.
Why?
Because I had been in Washington. I'd been here for conferences, internships, and I'd not traveled much. So I liked, it's Potomac fever, I think. People move here for whatever reason, and they stay. So that's what happened to me. And got a real estate license and didn't know anybody. But I wasn't that far out of graduate school there, and when I'm in my mid-20s, and liked classes, liked to learn things, and that's how I got into real estate with that right off the bat, going to classes, getting professional designations, learning things, and it wasn't that far into my career before when people started to rely on me. I'm a year into the business, and people who'd been in the business for 10 years were asking me how to do things. And it turns out I discovered I liked that. I mean, I liked to be the source of that. I liked learning. And then over time, it sort of transitioned into, I sold for almost 15 years, but got to a point where I wanted to do something different. And started to talk to people about managing and ultimately talked to Jonathan Taylor, Michael Rankin about coming on. They had not hired a manager at that point at Sotheby's.
So you were the first manager they hired when they Okay. Well, in terms of the state of the market, 2022 has been the roller coaster kind of ride here. Mm-hmm. We started off the year in an extremely low interest rate environment, low inventory, low interest rates, very hot market for DC and also around the country. We saw lots of multiple offers on things, and it was aggressive and intense, and then it's wound down pretty quickly towards the middle of summer and then into the fall.
Did you have any intuition on that? Like, was it The Big Short, the movie? It's like, you saw something in the background and it's like, this is going to come to a free-for-all.
Well, I mean, there's always the threat of higher interest rates that were there, and you're never quite sure what was going to happen there. But it was, you always knew that 2020, 2021 market couldn't last forever. It wasn't good for anybody. I mean, even though agents reap the benefits from it, that was not a good market to be in for mental, physical health, wasn't a good market for consumers, prices were going up at rates that were just unsustainable. So it had to end at some point, and it just turned out to be this year.
Right.
Yeah.
Do you compare that market to any other markets you've seen in the past? Like I call it the COVID years, bubble years, whatever you want to call it. But have you seen a market like that in your existence?
I've seen good markets, but never to that level where there were that many multiple offers on properties and that much frenzy around listings. So it's the first time I had seen it at that level.
So sometimes during these are articles that I just pulled up. We do our State of the Market episode. We usually have a couple articles. I'm just gonna like read the headlines and then a little bit of the article, and then we're gonna discuss. Okay. So this one's from Inman News. Real estate in 2022, when the blank finally hit the fan. Okay. After collectively holding our breath through a lengthy global pandemic, 2022 turned out to be the year we'd all been waiting for, but not in a good way. For many years, in costly cities like LA and San Francisco, would-be homebuyers lamented the soaring cost of housing and talked about waiting for a crash. People who have been around since the 1970s and 80s marveled at post-recession interest rates, a stark contrast with the sky-high rates of those folks' youth, and suggested the good times couldn't last forever. So, I mean, this article is basically just echoing what you said, that, that low interest rate environment, that intoxicating environment of 2.75% on a 30-year fixed, it's just not sustainable.
Well, and you had a pandemic where that just accelerated, consumers' real estate plans. I mean, maybe people weren't planning on moving, they weren't planning on buying a new house, but the pandemic sort of made people think. I mean, well, gee, I'm in a 1-bedroom, I need a 2-bedroom. I'm in a 2-bedroom, I need a house with a yard. I'm in a house with a yard, I want to live by water. I want to live on a horse farm. So you had all sorts of people moving over a 2-year period that maybe wouldn't have been moving normally. So you had that mixed in with the low interest rates, and that's where we got where we were.
Yeah.
So based on that article, I mean, like, it's a nationwide issue that we're seeing, right? It's not like, oh, it's just DC or it's New York, or in some markets seem to be more affected than others. Do you follow like the national market on like?
Well, it's a nationwide issue, but it's not the same everywhere. I mean, it's a slower market. We can start there. It's a slower market everywhere. But they mentioned San Francisco, Los Angeles in that article, and certainly the West Coast is seeing sort of a worse market than we're seeing here. They're seeing much more inventory coming on, and I think the anticipated price correction there is sort of significantly higher, at least the estimates for what we expect here. So.
And then you throw in the caveat of work from home, right? And I was trying to pull up an article on my phone. There's an article that people are still able to work from home, right? So you have big city jobs, but Florida, for example, there's still people flocking to Florida. It's the Sun Belt. You can work from home, be at the beach, different lifestyle. Taxes are different down in Florida. So you have that caveat on top of what's going on as well.
But you have people who look at Florida and say, I don't want any part of that. I mean, there's plenty of people who
it's not for everyone.
Yeah, not for everyone. So yeah, you have that. People looking for better, better climates, better places to retire, things like that. But,
So you mentioned months of inventory a few seconds ago. Tell us about for all of our listeners and the layman listener, tell us why that is an important statistic, months of inventory. What does that mean?
Well, when I really want to know what the market's doing, I'm concerned about two things. The pace of sales, the number of sales in a month, and the amount of inventory we've got, because everything else follows that. And months of inventory. I mean, there's a true absorption rate, and that's what absorption rate is part of that. True absorption rate uses sales. I mean, it's.
Can you explain to our listeners real quick what absorption rate is? I mean, like Max and I know, but not every listener out there knows what an absorption rate is.
Sure, it's the pace of sales based on the number of sales in a month or any other period you use. But a month is typically what I use. Based on the number of sales in a month, how long would it take to exhaust the current inventory? And I think we've looked over the last, again, 2020, 2021, we saw 1 month of inventory, less than 1 month of inventory in most of the markets, most of the counties we're working in. And that's a severe seller's market there. And just to give you a sense, 1 to 3 months is considered a seller's market. 4 to 6 months is sort of a market in equilibrium. Sort of over 6 months is a buyer's market.
So 4 months is just a normal market.
Yeah.
Average.
Yeah.
So you were saying earlier, you were mentioning, Brent, an agent who was saying, an experienced agent who said, I've never seen a market like this, meaning this is a really bad, rough market.
He's been in a, this agent came to me yesterday. He's been in the business for 30 plus years. Good agent, does a lot of high-end deals. And he's like, I've never seen a market like this, right? And this goes back to, what is that, like 1990 he got into the business?
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
it's interesting because I came into the business when the market crashed in 2000, right before the market crashed.
7, 8.
Yeah.
But Fred brought some numbers with him to try to put things into perspective. So right now we're in November 2022, or we're not in. This is taping a little after that, but these are the numbers we have right now. But November 2022 was definitely a slower month as compared to the previous months, and it was sitting for DC 4 months of inventory. Comparatively, just for a couple of these numbers, we go all the way back to 1990. It was almost 12 months of inventory.
And they're double-digit interest rates at that time as
Right,
well. So,
right.
I mean, we're thinking, 6% is high. People had to deal with 10, 12% in 1990.
Yeah. 95, worse, over 14 months of inventory. That's just a little side note there. My family is from DC. We had a house in a beautiful neighborhood, Chevy Chase, DC, on Ingomar Street, which actually recently sold again, the same house. They were trying to sell it in the 90s. This is actually how we met Jonathan Taylor. And it was around that time, 94, 95. The house was listed for $450,000. No one would even come see it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like the perfect 4-bedroom colonial house that everyone is just like beating each other up for these days, right? That was then.
Yeah.
So what did it trade for? Just curious.
Recently, 1.8 million.
Wow, you guys should have held on to that.
I mean, I sold it in 2003 for what we thought was like quite a bit of money, but not compared to these days.
Well, I mean, so much of where we are right now and sort of evaluating where we are is it requires a bit of perspective, because we're coming off of the 2 best years ever, and there are agents in the market saying, when are we getting back to that? And the answer is probably not in your lifetime.
Right.
Probably not in your lifetime. And we're coming off of as 2 agents that are mostly listing agents here. I mean, you came off of 2 years where you didn't need to have much of a marketing plan.
You had a 3-day marketing plan.
Yeah, you readied the house for the market. You staged it. You did all of that, but you didn't have to think about what am I going to do in week 3, week 4, month 2, month 4, month 6. So that's a market agents have worked in. They've been in the business for a while. And it's just a matter of perspective. I mean, that 1, 2, 3 week sale or that 1, 2, 3 day sale, not normal. That was not normal, and we're not getting back to that anytime soon.
So this is like old age question for any agent that's out there. What would you recommend? Neighboring house sold for $1 million in the fall. We're going in for a listing presentation. Identical. It's apples to apples. What would you price that house at going into the spring of 23?
Well, it depends. It depends on where you are. I took a look yesterday in Glover Park. 0 single-family houses on the market in Glover Park.
Right.
So if you want to live in Glover Park, I may be at 1.1 if it was at the last sale was 1 million. Chevy Chase is very similar. They were like too expensive new construction houses, which again, new construction in this market almost always overpriced. I mean, I don't know if you find that way, but certainly more expensive things.
Well, it's more expensive to do though.
Yeah, and they started building in a really good market.
Mm-hmm.
So again, if you're working with the developers, tough for them to come off those prices. But other than that, not much inventory in Chevy Chase. So
Sure.
I'm probably going to go up in price. But, if I've got a condo in DuPont Circle, the last sale was $1 million, and I know the condo market is a little bit slower, I'm looking at something under that. And whether it's 975 or 950, kind of depends on the condition and other things. But
I'm just going to say about the inventory, and we're talking about these micro markets within our larger market. I was showing properties on Sunday in Montgomery County, basically everything from downtown Bethesda out towards like North Bethesda.
Right.
Just looking for something like a decent 2-bedroom, 2-bath condo for this buyer. There really wasn't much inventory at all
Sure.
in her price range. I mean, I think we found like 3 options, and one of them just showed really poorly, wasn't presented well. I mean, it was really sparse.
Sure.
Really sparse.
And you mentioned the November inventory numbers for DC, 4 months worth of inventory. But if you get into Montgomery County, less than one and a half months of inventory. If you get into Fairfax County, about the same thing. Certainly less than 2 months.
So it's still very tight.
Yeah, it absolutely is. Yeah, in these other markets. Yeah.
So I've been talking with a lot of developers the last couple of weeks, and it's, to me, when I'm telling sellers, developers, whoever's listening, it's like there's a game of chess going on right now, and it's like a lot of the backlog are sellers that came on the market prior to Labor Day, and they're not realistic with their pricing, and buyers are, they're savvy, and with the rates going up, there's a gap between sellers won't reduce the price and buyers aren't coming up to that demand.
Absolutely.
So you have that backlog of inventory where the new sellers coming on the market, they're more realistic. And my previous question is like, where would you price it? Yes, every neighborhood's going to be different. Every submarket is different. But I'm like, okay, so your neighbor got $1 million in 21. Let's come on and be aggressive and be 950.
Right.
And then see what happens. Because to me, that's where the delta is. It's like that there's that gap where sellers just won't reduce the price, buyers won't come up, and it's a waiting game. And we're starting to see on our side, a lot of sellers are like, you know what, we're not going to reduce the price. Let's put it up for rent. And we've lost, 4 listings the past 2 months or the past 30 days that just these sellers are able to get a rent from it. There was an article, I think in the New York Times, it might have been yesterday, about being a landlord. I mean, it's not all that it's cracked up to be.
Well,
I saw that one. Yeah.
Especially in DC. I mean, it's a much different situation and I find a lot of sellers, once they start that process, getting the business license, the rent control exemption, sort of getting the sense of what they have to do, it slows. If you're living in DC, you really need to think about whether you want to be a landlord or not.
A lot of these sellers, again, depending on when they bought, they have a lot of equity built into the place. Their interest rate is probably 2 or 3%. So it's like, if all the ones that we've rented in the past 30 days, they were able to make money over their mortgage.
Sure.
So it's just like,
well, if it's a long-term decision, I think if they're looking at it as a long-term investment, I think that may be the way to go for a lot of people. But if you're thinking, hey, I'm just going to rent it out for the year and try again next year, I would never suggest that.
That's funny you say that, because I say exactly that.
Yeah.
So I'm like, I'm like, rent it out for a year, because I do think going into 24, it's going to be robust. It's a presidential year. The market's going to be different. I'm hearing like on the private equity side, those guys have money kind of saved to do a lot of acquisitions in 24. And I think all that'll trickle down. So it's like, if you can rent it for 23, go for it. Just come out in the spring of 24.
So, but we're here, let's say in the November of 2023, and you're trying to sell it, and there's a tenant there. How much does that going to cost the owner?
Sure.
Yeah.
And on the same note, on a practical level, we had Ross and Dan on from Craftwork Capital. They're financial planners, and I was talking about, what do you think about the kind of assets that you guys work with, equities, bonds, et cetera, versus the real estate investing, like being a real landlord. And Ross was very straightforward. He's like, when you get in, you have to always look at the potential risk of any investment, right? As if you're analyzing, you think like real estate is a lower risk investment, but when you're really a landlord and you have tenants in whatever jurisdiction you're in, that is your risk. It's the taking on the tenancy.
Sure.
And he said, picture yourself having to evict someone. Maybe that's your highest level of risk. He said, in reality, I could never see myself going through that process.
Right.
So he's like, I don't think I'm a landlord.
Right.
And I think people don't really think about that. They think someone wonderful is going to move in, pay their rent, and say, "Oh, thank you so much for," and it's rarely like that, actually.
There's always headaches. I got a phone call last week from one of our tenants down in Florida. It's like the garbage disposal broke. So they called me and I'm like, "Do you have a plumber?" I'm like, so I had to call the eight. I mean, it was like 30 minutes of back and forth that people don't kind of realize. Even like that small, you're busy with your life, with your family, work, whatever. And it's like those little things take you away from your.
Yeah, and the typical homeowner doesn't think about hiring. They think they're going to manage it themselves. They don't want. They're not thinking of hiring a property manager. And those are the calls you get. It's midnight and my toilet stopped up.
Yeah.
Right.
Can you come fix it?
Or somebody's got to fix it, right? But you're getting the phone call. You've got to figure out where's the plumber, who do I call.
Last item on this topic I'll also say is that when I have clients who are like, I'm going to rent it out and we'll see how the market evolves later. And then can you recommend any property managers? And if you read reviews of property managers, there are some good property managers, but a lot of people do not want to do that work anymore because it is not very lucrative and it's a big headache. It's a tough job.
It's a mind-numbing profession. It really is. Having worked for companies that did a lot of property management, I mean, you never get a good phone call. I mean, you never, and really, as salespeople, we deal with happy clients all the time. But you
never get a box of cookies. Thank you, property manager.
No. Yeah. I mean, maybe the day the tenant moves in, but for every day after that, for the other 365 days a year, you're waiting for the call about the flood, the whatever, the non-payment of rent.
That's a great point, right? You never get a call 200 days in. I love this place. Thank you so much for allowing me to stay here. It's like
the best part about the best days of being a property manager are no call.
Right. Yeah.
So we've talked about where we are and where we've been. Circling back to where we're going, I'd like to get your take on this, Fred. There's an article from NAR talks about, NAR forecast 4.78 million homes will be sold in 23, which is down 6.8% from 22, which was 5.13. So what do you project? What are your projections, not NAR? What do you think 23 is going to look like here in Washington, D.C.?
Well, I think the potential is really, really good. I mean, because again, coming off of 2 fantastic years where people were moving just to move, and I think a lot of the 2022 business was accelerated back into 2020 and 2021. People moved then; they're not moving this year. So I think we've got a little bit of time to just wait that out. People were tired. I mean, people were tired of that market, and people have just moved when they weren't planning on moving. So I think there's a little bit of that. We're just waiting for the market to come back. Our inventory numbers are really, really good. I mean, I think that's what I like locally about, compared to what's going on nationally and again on the West Coast. Our inventory numbers are really, really good. And, people aren't putting houses on the market just to put houses on the market. So our inventory is shrinking going into the holiday season. So,
but do you see that being seasonal? Because, I mean, I see that every year. It's like, we've got sellers and developers calling us. It's like, take it off the week before Christmas and bring it back on MLK weekend after or whatnot. So it's like 30 days of just taking things off the market.
A little bit, but also you have, with the rate of sales, the number of sales are just low. The last 2 or 3 months have been the lowest in 10 years or so. So with the lower number of sales, even with people taking things off the market, the expectation is the inventory is probably going to grow a little bit, and it hasn't done that. And again, that's a really good sign for our market. We're talking about DC, and again, Montgomery County, Fairfax, and some of the surrounding counties, they're still at the same pace they were. I mean, just without the frenzy, with the one offer on the new house listing versus the 20 offers on the new house. So I mean, I think our market locally and just regionally is really set up to do well for 2023. It's always said that DC is recession-proof. I'm not sure that's completely true, but I think we will have a better market than the other other parts of the country. So.
Slightly wild card question from your business planning and managerial side of things, from the inexperienced agent to the experienced agent in a market slowdown like this, and to be quite frank, I don't think I've signed or gotten a new contract ratified in several weeks right now. And I have some nice listing inventory.
Sure.
And I have some good buyers, well-qualified buyers out here. Just I think for my buyers, the lack of inventory of what they're looking for has been a problem. Excuse me. And then on the listing side, we can always adjust prices to our sellers' delight, right? We're like, hey, might be time to do a price reduction, and
Right.
sometimes those take time. But what are some key ideas for an agent to plan for this sort of like real winter and financial winter period for the market?
Well, plan is the key word, because I think I remember back to the early 2000 mark, 2002, 3, 4, 5, going up to 2007, 8. Agents did really, really well in that period, and then all of a sudden the market stops, and you ask well, why were you successful in 2003, 4, 5? And if they can't tell you why they were successful, the business just fell into their lap, those agents are going to be in trouble. So you need a plan and you need a system. I know in the company, within TTR Sotheby's, we really like the Ninja planning system, but just have a plan and a system where you've got tasks every day, people you're calling, people you're mailing, things you're doing every day. And just having business planning meetings with agents, and people are worried about, gee, I did 10 million last year. Should I try for 15? I don't think I'm going to do that. Well, ultimately, I don't care what the end number is. I care what you're doing every day. Because if you're doing these sorts of things every day to generate business, it's going to work for you. And, and we're all guessing about the market. Anytime we're talking about what the market's going to do next year, I have no idea. Nobody, NAR has no idea. So next year for that $10 million agent, 8 may be a fantastic year. If the market really doesn't pick up, but they did their task every day. They did they had a regular schedule, and they did the best they could, and they did the best they did the best number they could. So it's planning, having a schedule, having a business plan. That's the most important thing.
I think that's well said. We just met with our team, and the one thing I keep coming back to, one of the owners of our company, Michael Rankin, has said that in our meetings. You still have to show up to work, right? You can't get into the news articles, the doom and gloom, the market's crashing, and then it gets into your head. At the end of the day, you've got to get to the office. You've got to make your phone calls. You've got to send your emails. You've got to do your reach outs, do your charity event, whatever you're doing, you still have to work. And at the end of the day, you'll get the business. You just have to be open-minded, positive mindset, and the business will come to you if you're doing the day-to-day in work, the routines.
Absolutely. You're talking about the doom and gloom and the articles and the headlines, and that's really not what we're seeing here. We're just seeing a slower market. We're seeing a slow market we've seen in several years, but we've seen this kind of market before in the past. Again, you go back and look over the years, and there's still transactions happening. And if this is the market we're working in, well, we're real estate agents. It doesn't really matter. We've got to sell houses. We've got to work with buyers and sellers. Doesn't matter, if it's if seller's market, buyer's market. If you're a serious real estate agent, you're working in all those markets. So.
Well, I think that's a great point, because again, we're across the board talking to different agents and different firms. I see agents all day long at the gym that I go to, Equinox down at West End, little shout out there. But these guys come up to me and they're like, oh, I'm doing a rental now. I'm doing rental. The market's doom and gloom. I'm going away for the whole month of December, the whole month of January. And to me, it's like being opportunistic. It's like, that's fine if you want to do that, but like people still need to sell homes. We're in a transient market. It's an international town where they're going to sell their home and move back to London or move over to LA, whatever. And there's buyers coming in here that have money and they want to buy. So people that want to work will find business in any market, whether it's good like it was during the COVID years or in a slow market. So I just find it funny that some of these agents are like, you know what? They buy into this doom and gloom. And for us, we create the narrative. Like, to me, it's like, it is doom and gloom. So I'm calling like all of our developers and investors, like, this next 6 months, it's going to be the time to buy. And we see across our plate on a daily basis, developers trying to get out of deals. I got 3 phone calls yesterday, like developers trying to pivot out of a situation. And it's like, those are opportunities for the right person to come in and kind of steal a deal if it's right for their portfolio.
Yeah, and again, so much about the the ninja training is about mindset. And again, if you're an agent waiting for again the best market ever to come back, well, that's not happening. So I mean, you're an agent, you're working in real estate. Doesn't matter what the market is. I mean, you're trained to sell houses, and that's what you need to do.
I think cycles run in about 10 years, and I thought before the COVID years, like we were headed to. I think you can kind of look at your numbers here, like you had 2.3 months of inventory in November 20. I think it might have been more in November of 19, but I saw us kind of slowing down, and then you had the COVID years, 2 years of just craziness. But
well, we had 10 years worth of inventory under 3 months in DC from 2012 to to 2022.
Right. So businesses in general, like industries, it doesn't matter what industry, it needs to reset.
That's the long bull market.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's good. To me, I tell people it's a good thing, right? Because you're going to get rid of your bad lenders, your title attorneys, home inspectors, appraisers,
real estate
agents that can't survive. It's like it's good because it cleanses the industry in general.
Yeah.
Fred, this has been awesome. Really appreciate you joining us for the state of the market.
Thank you for having me.
I think we still want to ask you some rapid fire questions, but can I get one in really
Absolutely.
quick? So,
is this rapid fire? This is a random.
It's a rapid fire, but I'm just gonna, because I know Fred is a lover of live music and live events. So I get asked all the time, like, "Where's your favorite place to go like see music and stuff?" And I don't like do that as much anymore. But you're always out. What is your favorite place in DC to go see live music, and your favorite place in New York to see live music?
Well, I mean, as I've gotten older, any place where I can sit down is my favorite.
Right.
So always happy to see a good show at Blues Alley. Birchmere is always a place I like.
I don't know, were these Blues Alleys in DC or
what? Blues Alley is like an institution in
Blues
Georgetown.
Alley's in Georgetown. Yeah.
What's that other place you just mentioned?
Birchmere is in Alexandria.
Okay.
Anthem is a great place.
Anthem,
I mean, it's sort of comparing that to the 930 Club where you have to stand.
Right.
Nice to go to the Anthem and be seated. New York depends on what I'm up for, but Village Vanguard is always a stop.
Classic.
Big fan of Village Vanguard. So.
Nice.
Excellent. And I got some follow-up questions on that. So who's your number one? Who is your favorite jazz performer that you would go see anywhere, anytime? Pay any price.
Probably who I'm seeing most often, probably Bill Frisell, a jazz guitarist. He's out there a lot. He plays a lot. You'll see him locally at Wolf Trap. He's at Village Vanguard next week, I believe.
Nice.
Maybe Village Vanguard or Blue Note. So I've seen him as much as anybody over the last few years.
Okay. What's your favorite city to visit?
Always New York. Yeah.
New York City?
Yeah.
You have a favorite place to stay up there? 2 questions. Favorite place, and there's so many neighborhoods. Like every neighborhood is like its own little city. Do you have a favorite neighborhood you like to stay
well,
in?
this weekend I'm going, and I'm going to go see Yola Tango. Yola Tango does annually 8 days of Hanukkah, 8 nights of Hanukkah shows at the Bowery Ballroom. So I'll be staying at I'm not going to, I don't know. I'm staying at a hotel nearby so I can walk there. So Lower East Side this time. But I'll stay wherever wherever I'm. Sometimes I stay Midtown because it's easy to get up and down.
All right.
Yeah.
Max, you got a favorite neighborhood?
In New York, I'm honestly mostly there now just to do like Broadway stuff. So I become like the classic New York tourist, and I end up in Midtown a lot.
Yeah.
Times Square.
So I'm not into the fancier hotels as you are. You two are probably, but my favorite sort of cheap hotel has always been Hotel Edison. On what is it, 40 in the 40s, I forget what, but the Rum House is a bar on the ground level there. I'm a big fan of the Rum House bar. One of the few really good bars at Times Square to visit. So.
Ron Mangus, if you're listening to this, is going to kill me, but like one of my favorite hotels that I've stayed in, he referred me. It's called the Marlin, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Have you stayed at the Marlin?
No, I know where it is.
It's
sort of
Chelsea, and
West Village.
It is in the West. It's West Village, the Village, but it's like it's right off of
Just
Fifth.
gave away his top secret hotel.
Top secret, and it's like there's the they have 2 penthouses. It's like an east and west. You got a terrace. It's a 1-bedroom, and it's relatively inexpensive. It's like $600 a night.
Wow, that's pretty good.
But they've only got 2 of those. there's a hotel.
And inexpensive
restaurant.
is relative, by the way.
Yeah, that's
To
subjective.
me, that sounds really inexpensive compared to the stuff that like now
Staying
that
at
I'm
the
traveling with a
Baccarat, it's
family,
like
it's like
$1,500.
right.
You got to shop though. I mean, there's a way to shop for a New York hotel room.
So how do you do that?
Well, do various Hotel Tonight is a good website.
Hotel Tonight?
Always Priceline. Hotel Tonight is really based their business model is selling hotels last minute. Sort of vacancies last minute. So you have to wait, and if prices go up, you're sort of stuck with the higher prices. But Priceline and Hotels.com, just you have to
stay
shop
flexible.
Yeah.
So I know you like to go out to eat. Do you have a favorite restaurant here in DC?
Right now it's probably Annabelle, where we've had dinner there. But it's a place they opened up early during COVID in 2021, and that's sort of on my way home, sort of between Georgetown and U Street where I live. And so I'd stop in once a week and have dinner.
Where is Annabelle?
Florida and R Street.
It used to be Restaurant Nora.
It was Nora. It was
yeah,
Nora.
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. But great menu, sort of easy to use. There are other sort of international menus. I mean, love Imperfecto, love Rooster and Owl. It's another one. Love Karma Indian down on 8th Street. So Daru on Capitol Hill on Maryland Avenue, another Indian that I like. So.
Fred's probably goes out more than anyone I know.
I gave somebody a gift, my brother, so he's not going to hear this until after the holidays, but and I'm not sure he listens to the podcast, but I gave him for the holidays. He goes Friday night to Pineapples and Pearls. I didn't realize how expensive that place was.
Yeah, it's an expensive tasting menu. Yeah.
I think it's like $400 a person.
Yeah.
I've not been there. I'm like, well, but this will be good for him to go.
Yeah, there are a few of those Jaunt is one of those above Bresco on 14th Street that has a really good, expensive tasting menu.
I've been there. I got invited there. I didn't pay, so
you did,
it was pretty cool. It was pretty good.
Roses is good. I've been there a couple of times. It's really good.
Sure.
I was talking to my wife Andrea, and she was like, Pineapples and Pearls is above. Same owner, but I'm like, really? I mean, for $400? I mean, what are you getting there? Anyway,
a special experience, Brent.
Yes. You have and I see on your Instagram you have like a lot of different cocktails. You have a favorite cocktail?
The go-to is probably a Manhattan. Rye Manhattan.
Keep it simple.
But I always like to, any bar that has a good cocktail menu, always happy to sample, whatever they've got. So.
Do you get them for free? Are you an influencer? It's like, hey, I'm going to post this on Instagram.
No. I mean, I had a friend who owned several bars in town. Actually, not anymore. But I would show up and he would comp whatever I was doing. And finally, he asked me, "Does it matter?" I said, "Well, no. Actually, it was because they treat me well. I mean, you show up and they recognize me, treat me well, give me good service. So whether it's sort of a dive bar or a high-end restaurant, I mean, that matters more than anything, really. I don't really expect anything free."
Right.
Yep.
Last question here. Who would play you in a movie?
Tom Hanks.
Perfect.
He's got a new movie coming out. I saw.
Yeah.
Which one?
When I'm thinner, people say that I look like Tom Hanks. Sometimes James Spader I get.
Oh, I definitely see that.
Yeah.
I definitely see that.
Yeah.
James Spader.
All right, Fred Kendrick, thanks again for coming out. Charity, we always give to the charity of our guest choice. Do you have a charity you want to give a shout out to?
Actually, one thing people don't know, I have a small parrot as a pet, and Phoenix Landing is the adoption agency, the rescue groups. So
Bird rescue?
Phoenix Landing is a bird rescue, yeah.
I've seen that parrot on Instagram.
I know about the parrot.
Yeah.
All right, man. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for listening to Keyed In with your hosts, Max and Brent, unlocking the minds of the industry's top real estate professionals. For more information on selling your home, find us online at KeyedInPodcast.com. Remember to subscribe to Keyed In on Apple Podcasts or wherever you like to listen to podcasts. Follow us on Instagram at Keyed In Podcast, at Rabin Max, and at Brent E. Jackson. And follow Max on TikTok at MaxwellRabin_properties.